help people realize what a national treasure they've had hiding in plain sight.
Great taste is never accidental. It is built in silence, in repetition, in the records that stay long after the room empties. In this film, Joe Bonamassa opens the private canon that shaped his ear, his touch, and his sense of weight. 10 rock albums, 10 quiet teachers, and a legacy hiding in the grooves. Number 1. Led Zeppelin II by Led Zeppelin. This record does not knock. It kicks the door in. For Bonamassa, it represents the moment when blues stopped asking permission and started demanding space. The riffs feel physical, the drums confrontational, the confidence almost reckless. It is not about polish, it is about authority. An album that teaches you how loud conviction can sound. For Joe Bonamassa, this album is less about mythology and more about commitment. It shows what happens when musicians stop hedging and start deciding. Jimmy Page's guitar tone is thick but controlled, aggressive without becoming careless. John Bonham's drums are not decoration. They are structure. Each hit lands with intent, forcing the songs forward. Bonamassa often points to this record as proof that confidence is something the listener feels immediately, even if they cannot explain it. Page once said, "The second record had to sound like we knew exactly who we were." That certainty is what Bonamassa listens for every time. Nowhere is that clearer than in Whole Lotta Love. The song stretches the blues until it becomes heavier, stranger, and more confrontational. It is familiar and unsettling at once, a balance Bonamassa would later chase in his own work. This album did not just raise the volume of rock music, it changed its posture. And once that stance was taken, there was no retreat. Number 2. Disraeli Gears by Cream. Here, the blues bends without breaking. Bonamassa has often returned to this album for its sense of freedom, where improvisation feels fearless but never indulgent. Every song feels like a conversation between discipline and chaos. It is the sound of players discovering how far they can go without losing themselves. For Joe Bonamassa, this record captures a rare moment when technical ability and curiosity meet in balance. Eric Clapton's guitar work is fluid but controlled, exploratory without drifting. The tones are warm, almost conversational, as if the guitar is thinking out loud. Ginger Baker's drumming pushes and pulls against that flow, creating tension without ever snapping the thread. Bonamassa hears this as a lesson in trust, between players and within oneself. Clapton once said, "We were trying to see how much space we could create without falling apart." That sense of risk is what keeps the album alive. Songs like Sunshine of Your Love feel deceptively simple, but the power lies in what is left unsaid. The riffs repeat, the groove holds, and the freedom comes from subtle shifts rather than explosions. Bonamassa has often echoed that philosophy, letting small variations carry emotional weight instead of overwhelming the listener. Disraeli Gears does not chase excess. It proves that true freedom comes from knowing exactly where the edges are. Number 3. Fire and Water by Free. This album breathes. It does not rush, it waits. Bonamassa hears restraint as power here, the courage to leave space and trust the silence. The guitar lines do not shout. They linger. It is a lesson in emotional economy, proving that intensity does not always arrive at full volume. To Bonamassa, this record is about confidence without display. Paul Kossoff's guitar work feels fragile and unguarded, each note bent slowly, deliberately, as if it might break under its own weight. The band plays with remarkable patience, allowing songs to unfold instead of forcing resolution. That patience is what Bonamassa studies most closely. The discipline it takes to hold back when you know you could push harder. Kossoff once said, "It was never about how many notes you played, but whether you meant them." That belief sits at the core of the album. All Right Now may be the most recognizable track, but even there, the power comes from simplicity. The groove settles in, the guitar speaks plainly, and the band lets repetition do the heavy lifting. Bonamassa has carried that lesson throughout his career, trusting feel over flash when the moment calls for it. Fire and Water reminds us that silence is not empty. In the right hands, it is where the truth waits. Number 4. Machine Head by Deep Purple. Precision wrapped in fire. This record shows Bonamassa what happens when virtuosity locks into purpose. Every part feels engineered for impact, yet never sterile. The songs move like machines built by humans who still sweat. It is hard rock with muscle memory and intent. For Joe Bonamassa, Machine Head represents discipline sharpened into force. Ritchie Blackmore's guitar lines are aggressive but exact, never wandering, never wasted. John Lord's organ does not soften the sound. It reinforces it, adding weight instead of ornament. Ian Pace's drumming keeps everything grounded, pushing momentum forward with relentless clarity. Bonamassa hears this album as a lesson in alignment, when every player commits to the same destination and arrives together. Blackmore once said, "We wanted the songs to hit immediately and leave no doubt." That sense of certainty is what Bonamassa has always admired. Tracks like Highway Star and Smoke on the Water feel inevitable, as if they could not exist in any other form. The riffs are simple, but their placement is exact. Bonamassa has often echoed that approach, knowing that precision, when paired with conviction, can feel just as dangerous as chaos. Machine Head proves that control does not weaken power, it focuses it. Number 5. Irish Tour 74 by Rory Gallagher. This is not a performance, it is a confrontation. Bonamassa often points to this album as proof that truth survives any room. The playing is raw, exposed, almost defiant. No safety net, just connection. It captures what happens when an artist trusts instinct more than image. To Bonamassa, this record is a document of courage. Gallagher walks on stage with nothing to hide, letting flaws exist alongside brilliance. The guitar tone is rough, sometimes brittle, but always honest. The band follows without polish, responding in real time rather than rehearsed comfort. Bonamassa hears this album as evidence that authenticity carries its own authority, even when conditions are hostile or unforgiving, and the stakes feel personal. Gallagher once said, "If it feels right, it usually is." That belief drives every moment of this record. Songs like "A Million Miles Away" stretch and bend, shaped by the room and the crowd as much as the players themselves. The music does not aim for perfection, it aims for truth, moment by moment, note by note, with no attempt to soften the edges. Bonamassa has often spoken about chasing that same immediacy, where performance becomes dialogue instead of display. Irish Tour 74 reminds us that the most powerful sound is honesty, played without armor. Number 6. Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs by Derek and the Dominoes. Pain pressed into vinyl. Bonamassa hears this album as a document of emotional risk, where technique serves confession. The guitars intertwine like unresolved thoughts, never fully settling. It teaches that vulnerability, when honest, can sound monumental. For Joe Bonamassa, this record stands apart because nothing feels protected. The playing is exposed, sometimes uneven, but always sincere. Eric Clapton's guitar does not aim to impress. It aims to confess. Duane Allman's slide lines enter like another voice in the room, answering questions that were never spoken aloud. Bonamassa often describes this album as proof that emotional truth can outweigh technical perfection, and that risk is sometimes the only path to resonance, even when it leaves scars behind. Clapton once said, "I wasn't trying to make a great record. I was trying to tell the truth." That honesty is what gives the album its lasting weight. The title track unfolds slowly, building tension through repetition and restraint, before releasing it all at once. Bonamassa has often pointed to that structure as a lesson in patience, where emotional payoff arrives only after trust has been earned and fully tested. This album does not resolve its pain. It lives inside it, and in doing so, becomes unforgettable. Number 7. Born Under a Bad Sign by Albert King. This record carries gravity. Bonamassa studies it not for speed or flash, but for phrasing that feels inevitable. Every note lands with intention. It is blues stripped of excess, reminding players that tone is a language before it is a skill. To Bonamassa, Albert King's playing feels immovable, as if the notes were always meant to fall, exactly where they do. There is no hurry here, no attempt to fill space unnecessarily. The guitar speaks slowly, confidently, trusting the listener to lean in. Bonamassa often credits this album with reshaping how he thinks about phrasing, learning that a single well-placed note can say more than a flurry of sound ever could. Albert King once said, "Sometimes the best note is the one you almost play." That restraint defines the entire record. Tracks like the title song feel heavy without being loud, their weight carried by tone and timing rather than force. Bonamassa has echoed that approach throughout his career, letting space do part of the work instead of fighting it, especially when emotion matters most. This album proves that mastery is not about how much you play. It is about knowing when not to. Number 8. Truth by Jeff Beck. Unpredictable and restless, this album refuses to sit still. Bonamassa is drawn to its sense of exploration, where rules feel optional and curiosity leads. It is the sound of someone searching in real time, letting the listener hear every turn of thought. For Joe Bonamassa, truth captures a rare moment when uncertainty becomes the point. Jeff Beck's playing feels almost conversational, shifting direction without warning, chasing ideas rather than structures. The tones are raw, sometimes abrasive, but always alive. Bonamassa hears this record as permission to experiment openly, to let curiosity override comfort. It is not about arriving somewhere polished. It is about documenting the act of searching itself, even when the answers remain unfinished. Beck once said, "I never wanted to sound settled." That refusal to stand still defines the entire album. Tracks like Beck's Bolero feel less like finished statements and more like questions asked out loud. The tension comes from not knowing what will happen next, and trusting that uncertainty will lead somewhere meaningful. Bonamassa has often spoken about valuing that same risk in his own work, allowing exploration to shape the music rather than confining it to expectations. Truth proves that growth rarely comes from certainty. It comes from movement, curiosity, and the willingness to stay unfinished. Number 9. At Fillmore East by the Allman Brothers Band. This is communal music. Bonamassa hears it as a masterclass in listening, where solos grow from trust rather than ego. The band breathes as one organism, stretching songs until they feel lived in. It shows how patience can become power. To Bonamassa, this album is less about individual brilliance and more about collective awareness. Duane Allman and Dickie Betts trade lines like conversations, responding instead of competing. The rhythm section holds steady, creating space for ideas to unfold naturally. Bonamassa often points to this record as proof that great improvisation depends on restraint, on knowing when to step forward and when to step back, and when to simply support the moment without interruption. Duane Allman once said, "We listened harder than we played." That philosophy defines every extended passage on the record. Songs like Whipping Post expand far beyond their studio versions, shaped by feel rather than time. Bonamassa has long admired how the band allows moments to stretch until they find their natural end, trusting the connection between players, room, and audience alike, without rushing resolution. At Fillmore East reminds us that the strongest voices often rise from listening first, together, in real time. Number 10. Then Play On by Fleetwood Mac. Before the Polish, before the mythology, there was this. Bonamassa values the album for its balance of melody and edge, where blues roots still show through ambition. It feels transitional, like an artist standing between worlds, unsure which one will last. Those moments, he knows, are where identity forms. For Joe Bonamassa, this record captures Fleetwood Mac at a crossroads, still grounded in blues tradition while reaching toward something broader and less defined. Peter Green's songwriting feels introspective and restrained, never chasing spectacle. The guitar lines are thoughtful, sometimes fragile, allowing emotion to surface without being forced. Bonamassa hears this album as a reminder that growth often happens quietly, before an audience notices the shift. Peter Green once said, "I was more interested in feeling than showing off." That mindset shapes every track on the record. Songs like "Oh Well" balance raw blues phrasing with unexpected structure, hinting at future directions without abandoning the past. Bonamassa has often spoken about valuing artists in this in-between space, when certainty has not yet hardened into formula. It is where curiosity still leads the music forward. Then Play On does not announce a destination. It documents the moment before arrival, when possibility is still wide open. These albums are not trophies. They are conversations that never ended. For Joe Bonamassa, each record marks a moment when sound carried more than melody. It carried decisions, risks, and identity. Together, they trace a lineage where blues becomes rock, where volume meets restraint, and where confidence is earned rather than declared. What connects them is not perfection, but intent. Every album here chose honesty over safety, feel over formula. That is why they endure. Long after trends fade, these records still teach, still challenge, still listen back. And maybe that is the quiet truth behind great taste. It is not about knowing what matters now, but recognizing what will still matter later. If this journey stirred a memory or sparked a discovery, share your favorite album in the comments and subscribe for more stories where music history still breathes.